The deep space vessel ISS Peregrine floated silently in the shadow of a glowing blue nebula. Stars shimmered beyond the glass walls of the observation deck, and the hum of the ship's engines was the only sound that reminded the crew they were still moving through the void. Commander Elira Vance stood near the large viewing window, her eyes tracing the slow pulse of light that came from the nebula. It was beautiful, but it wasn't peaceful. That glow belonged to the Selthar, a mysterious alien species that communicated not with words, but through patterns of energy, light, sound, and emotion. For 3 days, the Peregrine had been in silent orbit near them. No one dared to speak too loudly, afraid that even human noise might disturb the strange rhythm outside. The alien ships, sleek and silver, moved like living creatures, each one pulsing faintly in time with the others. The crew had stopped calling it a contact mission. Now, they called it the listening game, because that's all they could do. Listen. At the edge of the deck, Lieutenant Marcus Hale, the ship's communication officer, sat alone at a console. His back was straight, his eyes fixed on the transparent glass ahead. He hadn't moved for hours. He hadn't spoken much either. Elira watched him, concern tightening in her chest. Marcus had always been bright and full of humor. But ever since the Selthar appeared, something in him had changed. He'd begun hearing things, sounds and feelings that no one else could sense. The ship's doctor said it was stress. Elira wasn't so sure. She walked toward him quietly. The blue light from the nebula painted his face in soft color, making him look half like a man and half like a reflection of space itself. "Marcus," she said gently, standing beside him, "you've been sitting here since the last shift. You need rest." He didn't answer at first. His eyes followed a faint ripple of light that danced through the nebula. Then finally he spoke. "They're trying to say something," he whispered. "I can almost feel it," Elira sighed. "We've run every translation algorithm. Nothing matches. We don't even know if it's a message." He turned to look at her then, really looked. His eyes were tired but alive with something she couldn't name. "It is a message," he said. "But it's not meant for the machines to read. It's meant for us," she frowned. "What do you mean?" He looked back at the nebula. "They think through emotion, not sound. They don't send words. They send feelings. When they flash that light, they're feeling something. I can sense it." Elira studied him for a long moment. The crew had already begun whispering about Marcus, some calling him gifted, others saying he was losing his mind. But Elira trusted him. She always had. Still, she needed him to talk. She needed to understand what he was going through. Slowly, she sat down beside him. The seat was cold, the hum of the ship quiet between them. She leaned slightly closer, her voice soft. "If I sit closer," she murmured, "will you finally tell me what you're thinking?" Marcus smiled faintly, his first smile in days. "I'm thinking, they're not aliens in the way we imagine. They're explorers just like us. They don't use words because they've never needed them. They share thoughts. And now they're trying to learn how we think." Elira looked out at the glowing shapes again. The Selthar ships had begun to shift, aligning slowly with the Peregrine's position. It was subtle at first, a tilt, a pause, but then unmistakable. The alien vessels mirrored the human ship's orbit exactly. "Marcus," she said quietly, "do you see that?" He nodded. "They're copying us." The control room lights flickered as the ship's sensors started picking up strange energy readings. A crew member's voice came through the intercom, urgent but calm. "Commander, we're detecting a formation change in the Selthar fleet. They're matching our trajectory." Elira replied, "Maintain position. No sudden moves." She turned back to Marcus. "What are they doing? Is this a threat?" Marcus shook his head slowly. "No, they're trying to understand us. When we move, they move. When we stop, they stop. They're learning behavior, not just movement, but intent." The light outside the window pulsed again, this time brighter. Elira felt something deep in her chest, a strange warmth as if the light had touched her heart. For a moment, she wasn't standing in a ship above an alien nebula. She was seen. "What was that?" she whispered. Marcus looked shaken. "That was them, trying to speak." The bridge alarm blinked once, then fell silent. The sensors no longer showed interference, just calm waves of energy, steady and rhythmic like breathing. Marcus touched the console and whispered, "They're listening to us." "Listening?" Elira repeated. "To what?" "To everything. Our ship's pulse, our heartbeats, our fear, our curiosity. They're learning what it means to feel like a human." Elira leaned forward, trying to make sense of it. Humanity had spent centuries searching for intelligent life, expecting languages, logic, and science. But what if true intelligence wasn't in words, but in empathy? The lights outside dimmed, the nebula softening to a gentle blue. Marcus's eyes closed for a second, as if hearing something only he could hear. Then he opened them again and said quietly, "They understand me a little now. They know we're not here to fight. They're trying to tell us that they want to learn." Elira stared at him in awe. "How do you know that?" Marcus smiled weakly. "Because I can feel them smiling back." The hum of the ship returned to normal. The tension in the air faded into quiet wonder. For the first time in days, the Peregrine felt alive again. Not as a metal vessel lost in deep space, but as a bridge between hearts separated by stars. Elira placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder and whispered, "Then maybe, Lieutenant, we've just made the first real contact in history." Outside the window, the alien lights flickered once more, slow, soft, and deliberate. A heartbeat, a sign of understanding. And far beyond the glass, the nebula seemed to whisper back. The following morning on the ISS Peregrine began quietly. The soft glow of the nebula still shone beyond the viewing windows, but now the light had changed. It no longer shimmered randomly. It pulsed in slow, organized waves, as if the entire nebula were breathing. Commander Elira Vance stood in the command center, watching the data screens flicker with unreadable signals. Every few seconds, a faint hum passed through the ship's metal walls. It was not mechanical. It felt alive. The Selthar were still there. Dozens of alien ships floated at a careful distance, perfectly mirroring the Peregrine's orbit. Their glowing hulls reflected the blue of the nebula, giving them an almost peaceful appearance. Elira folded her arms. "Status?" Lieutenant Nora Liem, the ship's science officer, glanced up from her console. "No sign of aggression. Energy readings stable. The Selthar formations are repeating our movement patterns and repeating." Elira asked. "Yes," Nora replied. "Every time our engines adjust orbit, they match the same pattern within seconds." "They're mimicking us." Elira frowned thoughtfully. "Still copying." Then her gaze shifted toward the corner of the bridge where Marcus Hale sat surrounded by floating screens of light. His eyes were focused, but his expression calm, almost serene. Since yesterday's strange event, he had become the center of attention. Not just because of what he'd sensed, but because the aliens seemed to respond only when he was present. Elira approached him. "You've been quiet, Lieutenant. Tell me what you're hearing today." Marcus looked up. His voice was soft but steady. "It's more organized now. Yesterday it felt like emotion, raw and unclear. But today it feels like intent. They're trying to show us something." "Show us?" Elira asked, leaning closer. Marcus nodded. "They think in images, in patterns of light. When they pulse the nebula, it's like they're painting thoughts in the air. I can sense small ideas, curiosity, welcome, and—" He paused, searching for the right word. "And confusion. They don't understand how we separate our minds from each other. To them, thinking is a shared act." The crew exchanged uncertain looks. Elira could tell half of them were fascinated and the other half deeply uneasy. She turned back to Marcus. "Is there any way we can reply?" Marcus smiled faintly. "Words won't reach them, but maybe feelings will." Hours later, the Peregrine's large communications chamber filled with quiet excitement. The plan was simple yet bold. If the Selthar communicated through emotion, then humanity would answer the same way, not through weapons or radio waves, but through expression. Marcus stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by sound equipment and holographic instruments. Engineers had connected the ship's sensory transmitters to the nebula's energy field. For the first time, they would try to send a message of feeling rather than speech. Elira watched from the control deck. "Are you ready?" Marcus exhaled. "As ready as I'll ever be." He signaled to Nora, who began the transmission. At first, nothing happened, only the quiet hum of the ship. Then softly, the speakers began to play the first notes of an ancient melody, Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. The gentle music echoed through the chamber, drifting into the ship's systems and beyond the hull. Carried into the vacuum by electromagnetic conversion, outside the nebula shimmered faintly, the light rippling as if listening. Then something miraculous happened. The Selthar ships began to glow brighter, one after another, each pulse matching the rhythm of the music. Their lights danced with the melody, responding like partners in a cosmic duet. The crew stared in awe. "They're answering," Nora whispered. Elira couldn't look away. "They understand beauty." Marcus smiled softly, his hand pressed to the glass. "They don't just understand it, they feel it. They're feeling what we feel." For the next hour, the ship broadcast not data or signals, but human sound. Classical music, laughter from recordings, even the gentle rhythm of rainfall. Each time the Selthar answered with waves of light that shimmered across the nebula like living art. But with each new exchange, Marcus grew quieter. His eyes seemed distant, his thoughts somewhere far beyond the ship. Elira noticed and stepped closer. "Marcus, are you all right?" He hesitated before answering. "They're inside my thoughts just a little. I can sense them like a whisper at the edge of my mind. They're not trying to hurt me. They're curious. They want to know what it means to be human." Elira felt a chill run down her spine. "Can you control it?" He nodded slowly. "I think so. But every time I connect, I lose a little sense of distance. It's like standing in the middle of two voices and hearing them blend." "Take a break," she urged. He smiled faintly. "If I stop now, we might lose the connection." That night, the Peregrine drifted quietly through the glowing field of blue light. Most of the crew slept, but Elira remained awake, standing again at the observation deck. The stars looked softer now, the nebula gentler. Footsteps approached. Marcus joined her, his face calm but pale. "You should be resting," Elira said gently. "So should you," he replied with a small grin. They stood together in silence, watching the nebula pulse slowly in the dark. Elira finally spoke. "Do you ever wonder what they think of us? What they see when they look at humans?" Marcus's gaze didn't leave the stars. "They see something we don't see in ourselves. They see chaos but also creativity, fear but also hope. They think our greatest strength is not knowledge but imagination." Elira raised a brow. "Imagination?" He nodded. "To them, thought is shared. They never dream alone. They never imagine something that doesn't exist, but we can look at an empty sky and build a future inside our minds. That's something they've never known." Elira turned to him, her voice softer. "That's why they're here." Marcus nodded again. "Yes, they want to learn how to dream." The idea hung in the air like a fragile light. Suddenly the nebula flashed, bright, powerful, almost blinding. Alarms flickered across the deck, but no one panicked. The flash wasn't an attack. It felt like excitement. Marcus staggered slightly, clutching his head. Elira caught his arm. "Marcus!" "I'm fine," he said, breathing deeply. "They're just trying to speak faster. It's too much information. What are they saying?" He closed his eyes, focusing. "They're showing me images. Planets, oceans, stars, memories. Their world doesn't exist anymore. It was destroyed long ago. They've been searching for meaning, for something new to feel, and they think humans might help them find it." Elira's voice softened. "They're lost," Marcus nodded. "Yes, and they see us as a way home." For a long time, neither of them spoke. Outside, the Selthar ships floated quietly, their lights gentle and rhythmic. The nebula itself seemed to hum with warmth like a soft heartbeat shared between species. Finally, Elira said, "Maybe they're not just listening to us. Maybe they're learning from us, learning what it means to care, to dream, to hope." Marcus smiled weakly. "Maybe that's what humanity's gift really is. We don't just survive, we inspire." A soft chime echoed through the deck. Nora's voice came over the intercom. "Commander, you'll want to see this." Elira and Marcus hurried to the control room. On the main display, the Selthar fleet had rearranged itself again, but this time the pattern wasn't random. The alien ships had formed a perfect circle around the Peregrine. Within the circle, the lights pulsed in steady intervals, shaping a repeating pattern, almost like music, Marcus whispered. "They're sending music back to us." The crew listened as soft tones echoed through the ship's sensors. It was uneven and strange, but undeniably melodic. The Selthar were trying to make human music. Elira's chest tightened with emotion. "They're speaking our language." Marcus nodded slowly, eyes glistening. "No, Commander. They're speaking from the heart." The lights dimmed as the alien melody faded, leaving the crew in speechless wonder. Humanity had crossed an invisible bridge, one not built from metal or code, but from feeling. Elira turned to Marcus. "Whatever happens next, we can't go back to silence." He smiled faintly. "No. We've already taught the universe how to listen. Outside, the Selthar lights glowed once more, calm and beautiful. The void between stars didn't seem empty anymore, it was filled with understanding. The next day began with silence, but it was not an empty silence, it was the quiet before something important. The ISS Peregrine floated peacefully among the glowing Selthar fleet. The alien ships no longer pulsed in random flashes. Their light had rhythm, form, and gentle meaning. Every glow felt like a heartbeat. Commander Elira Vance stood at the observation window once again. Her reflection looked calm, but inside she felt a storm of thoughts. The crew had made history. For the first time, humans and an alien species had understood each other, not through words but through emotion and music. Yet she sensed that the story was not finished. The Selthar had one more message to send. Lieutenant Marcus Hale entered quietly. His face looked pale and faint lines of light shimmered in his eyes. Elira noticed immediately. "You didn't sleep again," she said gently. He smiled a little. "No. They were speaking to me all night. Not with words, but with images, dreams." "Dreams?" Elira asked, curious. Marcus nodded. "They wanted to show me who they were. And what they've lost." He stepped closer to the glass, watching the alien lights. Their home star died centuries ago. Their world turned to dust. For a long time they wandered space, searching for someone who could feel the way they once did. When they found us, they didn't know what they were seeing. They thought we were just more noise in the universe. Elira frowned softly. "And now?" Marcus's voice was quiet but full of awe. "Now they see us as the bridge between loneliness and hope." A gentle hum spread through the ship. The lights dimmed as the Selthar ships shifted formation again. Slowly they moved closer to the Peregrine, surrounding it like a protective circle. The sensors came alive. Lieutenant Nora Liam looked up from her console. "Commander, the Selthar are projecting a signal directly toward us." "Not a scan, something else." Elira leaned over. "Can we translate it?" Marcus shook his head. "No need. I can feel what it means. They're asking for connection. One final step." "Connection?" He nodded. "They want me to come to them. They want to share their minds, to understand what it truly means to be human." A heavy silence filled the command room. The crew looked at one another nervously. Nora spoke first. "Commander, this could be dangerous. We don't know what they'll do to him." Elira's jaw tightened. She turned to Marcus. "Do you think it's safe?" Marcus took a deep breath. "I don't think they know what harm even means. They've never had to fight for survival. Their world ended not because of war, but because of time. They only know learning and memory." Elira hesitated. Every part of her training warned her against letting a crew member enter an alien vessel. But another part of her, the human part, knew this was what exploration truly meant. "Then we'll go together," she said. Marcus looked surprised. "Commander," she raised a hand. "No arguments. Humanity didn't come this far to watch from behind glass. If we're building a bridge, we'll both step onto it." The docking bay glowed with soft white light. The air was calm, heavy with anticipation. Through the transparent bay doors, one of the Selthar vessels floated near, its surface shimmering like liquid silver. A gentle beam of blue energy extended toward the Peregrine, forming a walkway made of light. Marcus stared at it in wonder. "It's like they made it for us." Elira smiled faintly. "Then let's not keep them waiting." They stepped onto the glowing path. It felt solid yet weightless, like walking on a beam of air. The light shifted under their feet with every step. Ahead of them, the Selthar ship opened like a blooming flower. Inside there was no metal, no walls, only flowing light and sound. The air shimmered with gentle colors moving like water. Marcus whispered, "It's alive." Elira nodded slowly. "This entire ship, it's an organism." Then from the center of the room a shape appeared, a form of light changing every second. It wasn't solid, but it had presence. The Selthar had no eyes, no faces, yet somehow Elira felt it looking at her. Marcus felt a warmth spreading through his mind, like sunlight entering his thoughts. He didn't hear words, but he understood meaning. "They're asking if we're ready," he said quietly. Elira nodded once. "Tell them yes." Marcus closed his eyes. The world around him faded. He felt something gentle, like hundreds of voices whispering inside his thoughts, but the voices were not frightening. They were calm, curious, and kind. Images flowed through his mind. Stars being born, oceans rising, cities of light, and finally, Earth. The Selthar were seeing it through him. They were seeing humans laughing, building, dreaming. They were seeing the beauty of imperfection. Tears filled his eyes. Elira watched as faint streams of light moved around him, connecting his form to the glowing air. For a moment he looked almost weightless. "Marcus?" she whispered. He opened his eyes. They glowed faintly with blue light. "They understand now," he said softly. "They understand what it means to dream." Elira felt something in her heart shift. The Selthar were no longer just observing, they were feeling human emotion for the first time. Joy, wonder, hope. Then the light pulsed one last time and the voices faded. Marcus swayed, but Elira caught him before he fell. He smiled weakly. They said thank you. Back on the Peregrine, the crew watched from the bridge as the Selthar ships began to move. Slowly, gracefully, they drifted back into the nebula. Nora whispered, "Are they leaving?" Marcus, now resting in a chair, shook his head. "Not leaving. Traveling. They said they've learned what they came for. Now they'll carry our thoughts into the stars to share them with others." Elira smiled quietly. "So humanity will be remembered among the stars." Marcus nodded. "They'll remember our music, our laughter, our dreams." The alien fleet shimmered once more before fading into the bright mist. Soon only the calm blue glow of the nebula remained. The bridge was silent for a long time. No one wanted to break the feeling that lingered in the air, the feeling of connection, of something greater than themselves. Finally, Elira spoke. "Log this as our final entry for the Selthar contact mission. Humanity came to the stars searching for life, and we found it. But more than that, we found understanding." Marcus looked up at her with a faint smile. "And maybe we reminded the universe what it means to feel alive." That night, the Peregrine drifted quietly through the emptiness. Elira couldn't sleep. She walked once more to the observation deck. The nebula still glowed faintly in the distance, peaceful and vast. She sat in the same chair where Marcus once sat, staring into the stars. The quiet hum of the ship surrounded her. Footsteps approached. Marcus stood behind her, holding 2 cups of warm tea. He smiled. "Couldn't sleep either?" She shook her head. "Too much on my mind." He handed her the cup and sat beside her. For a while they simply looked out at the stars, saying nothing. Finally, Elira spoke softly, echoing the moment that started it all. "If I sit closer," she murmured, "will you finally tell me what you're thinking?" Marcus laughed quietly. "I'm thinking. The universe feels a lot less lonely now." She smiled, looking out at the stars. "You think they'll ever come back?" He nodded. "One day. Maybe not soon, but someday, when another species looks to the stars with hope, they'll hear the same light we shared today." The two sat in silence, the stars reflecting in their eyes. Somewhere far away in another corner of the galaxy, a faint blue light pulsed in rhythm with the Peregrine's signal. Proof that the Selthar still remembered. Humanity had not just reached the stars. They had taught them to feel.